Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. Before we get started, don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, drop a comment letting us know where you're watching from and what time it is there. That way, YouTube will keep showing you more stories like this. Now, let's begin. I'm never working the night shift again. Not because of the low pay or the difficult customers. It's because I can never forget the sight of bright red blood dripping down a clown's painted face. And more importantly, I can't forget the feeling of betrayal when I found out who was behind that makeup. My name is Lucy. I've been working at McDonald's in Riverside, California for 2 years now. The job isn't bad, especially the night shift. There aren't many customers, and my boss is pretty chill with the night crew. Usually I just sit there, do a little cleaning, and wait for the time to pass. The night shift also pays more, so I really didn't have any complaints. That evening started like any other. I was on the night shift at the pickup window. Around 1 a.m., I started getting really sleepy. My head was nodding, eyes closing, when suddenly the customer chime went off. I jolted awake, looked out the window. A figure standing at the menu board made me jump. It was a clown, brightly colored suit, a pale white painted face with a big red smile. "Hello, I'd want a Whopper." The man's voice was hoarse, sounding a little unnatural. "I'm sorry, this is McDonald's, not Burger King, and according to company policy, you have to be in a vehicle to be served," I gently explained. The clown stood still for a moment. "Then I'll have a bacon eider." I frowned. That wasn't on the menu. In fact, I'd never heard of anything by that name. At this point, I figured this was a prankster. "Sir, you need to leave our property immediately." I firmly closed the pickup window. I tried to get back to work. About an hour later, I'd almost forgotten about the whole thing. I was getting ready to shut down the ice cream machine when I heard a noise. Turning around, I saw the clown standing outside the pickup window again. "I'd like a Big Mac and a Coke." His voice was clearer and more serious now. I hesitated, thinking maybe he was just a genuinely costumed customer, and the restaurant could be flexible for certain late-night cases like this. And this time, he'd ordered real items. "That'll be $8.50, I said. The clown handed me the cash. After preparing the order, I opened the pickup window to hand him the bag of food. The clown reached out, but instead of just taking the bag, he deliberately touched my hand and held it there for a very long time. "Excuse me, could I get some extra ketchup?" he said, still not letting go of my hand. I tried to pull my hand back, but he gripped it tighter. "I need ketchup," he repeated, then suddenly yanked my hand hard towards him. Before I could react, he yanked again, pulling my body forward. I screamed in a panic. With my free hand, I grabbed the barcode scanner and slammed it towards him. "Let go!" The scanner hit his forehead, and blood started to trickle down. The clown released my hand, stepped back, his hand touching the wound. Bright red drops of blood dripped onto his pale white face. He calmly offered a very wide smile. I slammed the pickup window shut, my heart pounding like it would burst from my chest. Trembling, I grabbed my phone to call the police, then tried to reach the store manager, but Mike didn't pick up. I called him repeatedly but couldn't get through. The police arrived after about 10 minutes. They checked the surrounding area but couldn't find the clown. They took a report and promised to increase patrols, then drove me home. The next morning, I arrived at the store early to report the incident to Mike. He was sitting in his office, looking tired. Mike listened, occasionally nodding, but I felt he wasn't really paying attention. It was probably just someone trying to mess with you. Kids like to pull stunts like that. You shouldn't worry about it too much. Mike looked up. I noticed a long cut on his forehead. The cut was deep, and there was dried blood around it. My heart started to pound. "How did you get that injury?" Mike raised his hand to his forehead, hesitated, and avoided my gaze as he tried to explain. I clearly remembered the wound on the clown's forehead. Mike's wound was in the exact same spot, the same shape. I looked him in the eyes. "Why did you do it?" Mike stopped smiling. What are you talking about? But I already knew the answer. The manager I had always trusted, like an older brother, was the very person who had terrorized me. I quit my job immediately and left. In the weeks that followed, I often woke up in the middle of the night, dreaming of the clown standing by my bedroom window. But the scariest thing wasn't the clown. It was the realization that the people you trust can become your enemy overnight. The real fear doesn't come from strangers, but from those closest to you. I moved to San Diego and started working at a grocery store, and I swore I would never work a night shift again. My name is Sarah. I'm 23 years old and I'm a senior in college. I've been working the night shift at the McDonald's on Maple Avenue to help pay for my living expenses. The job isn't too tough, and I figured I'd stick with it for a while until... At first it was just small creaks and scuttling noises. They were easy to ignore because I thought it was just the old ventilation system. But slowly, they started getting louder and clearer. I remember the first night I realized something was really wrong. I was cleaning the dining area around 2 a.m. The store had been closed for an hour. Then I heard footsteps in the kitchen. It wasn't the sound of pots and pans or silverware. I froze. A chill ran from the back of my neck all the way down my spine. I tried to listen. It took me a few seconds to gather enough courage to say, "Is anyone there?" The only answer was heavy silence. I told myself it was just my imagination, or maybe a mouse. I knocked on the manager's office door. His name was Mike. "I swear there's someone in the kitchen area," I whispered. Mike looked up from a stack of forms and frowned. "Sarah, have you been watching horror movies again? Nobody can get in after we close." He had a lot of work to do, but he still came with me to check the whole store. We didn't find anything strange. After that night, I started noticing strange things. Boxes of fries were missing, even though I was sure I had counted them all. A mayonnaise bottle was open, and nobody claimed to have used it. The strange noises kept getting louder, especially when I was working alone. I looked up at the ceiling, wondering if someone could climb up there and move around in the small space between the ceiling and the roof. The thought was crazy, but I couldn't get it out of my head. A month went by, and things got worse. Even though no one else seemed to notice, I felt like I was being watched. Even when the store was crowded, I felt an invisible presence. Sometimes I'd even see the ceiling tiles shift or a shadow flit across the gaps. I couldn't focus on my job. I was irritable, panicked, and exhausted. I stayed up all night searching online for strange break-ins at fast food restaurants. While I didn't find anything exactly like my situation, I did come across a few small stories and articles about stolen food, weird noises, and signs that people were getting into stores after closing. I told Mike about it again, but he thought I was overreacting. "Sarah, if someone broke in, the cameras would catch them." But the cameras only covered the cash registers and the front door, not the kitchen or the ceiling. One night, as I was changing after my shift, I saw a small crack in the ceiling right above my locker. I was sure it hadn't been there at the start of my shift. A cold feeling ran through my body. I snapped a picture of it and then left. The next night, I came in early and checked. The crack was gone, but I had the photo. I hadn't imagined it. I decided to investigate on my own. That night, after Mike left, I hid in the employee break room with the lights off. My phone was set to record video. I sat there for almost an hour, trying not to move, breathing as quietly as possible. The first sound came, a soft creak like someone was moving very carefully on old wooden floorboards. Then another sound. They were getting closer. My heart started beating faster and faster. The ceiling tile directly above me began to shake, as if something was pressing on it. At the same time, the next ceiling tile did too. Whatever was up there was moving toward me. I forgot my plan and the phone that was recording. Fear made me jump up. I ran to my car as fast as I could, started it, and sped out of the parking lot. In my rearview mirror, the McDonald's store still had its lights on inside. And I swear, Just as I turned onto the main road, I saw a figure standing inside, looking out. It was a very tall shadow. I didn't go back to work the next night. On the third day, Mike called me. "Sarah, you need to explain yourself. What happened that night? You left the store wide open. The security camera caught you running like you were being chased by a ghost." "Mike, there's someone in the ceiling." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I thought he would laugh at me, but when he spoke, his voice was different, tense and worried. The next day, 2 police officers checked the store but didn't find anything unusual. There were no signs of a break-in or anyone living in the ceiling. They thought it might be animals and promised to send someone to check the roof, but I felt like they didn't really believe what I was saying. I put in my notice and quit my job. I tried to forget about it, focusing on my studies and finding another job. 2 months later, as I was watching the evening news, I noticed a small story about a man who had been arrested for breaking into a McDonald's in Greenfield, about 30 miles from me. He had been living in the ceiling for several weeks, stealing food and creating a network of tunnels in the store. I froze when they showed his picture. Gaunt, sunken eyes, long, dirty hair. His name was Jeffrey Leeds, and according to the report, he had done this at least 6 McDonald's locations in the area. He claimed he was only eating and sleeping, but the police found notebooks in his backpack with the habits, names, and addresses of employees, and photos taken from above. I tried to comfort myself, knowing Jeffrey Leeds had been caught. But then a terrifying thought popped into my head. If he could live in a McDonald's ceiling for weeks without anyone knowing, how many other people are doing that right now? How many ceiling people are watching us in stores, schools, offices, or even in our own homes? That night, I couldn't sleep. Lying in bed, I stared at my ceiling, listening to every creak, and wondered, am I really alone? Some nights I wake up feeling like someone is standing outside my bedroom window, even though I live on the 12th floor, and I don't think it's an illusion, because Richard has never been found. I'm Sarah, 28 years old. 2 months ago, I moved from California to Denver to work in the cardiology department of a local hospital. In cardiology, family members are allowed to stay overnight to care for patients, so the atmosphere at night feels less lonely than other departments. The first week went smoothly. I gradually got used to the job, learned how to use the equipment, and memorized the names of my colleagues and patients. Everything was normal until I met Richard. He was the husband of Mrs. Helen, 65, who had just been admitted for a heart attack. Mrs. Helen was in room 314, a double room, but the bed next to her was empty. Richard was much younger than his wife, only about 45, tall, with slightly graying hair at his temples. The first time we met, he greeted me very politely, his voice gentle. "Thank you for taking care of Helen." In the first few days, I was truly touched to see Richard always sitting by his wife's bed. He held Mrs. Helen's hand, spoke softly, and read the newspaper to her. Not everyone is lucky enough to receive such care during illness. After about a week, I started to notice something strange. Every time I entered the room to check on Mrs. Helen's condition, Richard would turn and look at me. At first, I thought it was just a natural reaction from a family member seeing a nurse, but his gaze lingered longer than necessary. His smile started to make me feel uneasy. I tried to ignore that feeling. Maybe I was overtired and overly sensitive, but everything changed completely. That night, it was around 1 a.m. I was leaning over to check Mrs. Helen's heart monitor, focusing on jotting down the readings. Suddenly, I felt someone's breath close to my ear. "You smell so good." I jumped, turning around, the blood pressure monitor in my hand almost dropping to the floor. Richard was standing right behind me, just inches away. Richard took a step back, still smiling. "I was just complimenting your perfume." "But I don't wear perfume when I work. Hospital policy doesn't allow it." I nodded awkwardly, quickly finished my check and left the room. All the way back to my desk, I felt like 1,000 ants were crawling on my back. Richard's friendliness seemed excessive. The next morning, I I found a slip of paper on my desk. It was placed right on top of the patient files I was processing. The handwriting was neat. To my favorite nurse. Below it was a drawing of a flower, each petal detailed, carefully shaded. The artist must have spent a lot of time on this small drawing. I asked my colleagues, but no one knew who left the note. The night security guard also said he didn't see anyone unusual in the work area. For a second, I thought of Richard, but then I put the note in a drawer and decided not to investigate any further. From then on, the feeling of being watched began to haunt me. Once I went to the restroom at the end of the hallway and heard footsteps following me. When I opened the door, the hallway was empty, but I swear I heard a faint sigh from the dark corner near the stairs. Every time I passed room 314, I felt like eyes were watching me from inside. Many times I looked back and saw Richard's head peeking out from the doorway, but when our eyes met, he would just smile and turn away. I decided to avoid room 314. I asked Jessica to check on Mrs. Helen for me, giving the excuse that I was handling another emergency. When Jessica returned, she said, "Mr. Richard asked about you. He said you're the best nurse he's ever met." I froze, unable to respond. My next shift, around 2 a.m., the nurse call bell from room 314 started ringing. It wasn't a normal ring. It was continuous, non-stop. Jessica was busy with another patient, so I was forced to go check. When I entered the room, I saw Mrs. Helen sleeping soundly, her breathing steady. Richard sat in the chair next to her, his arm resting on the bed rail. He looked at me with a worried expression. "Could you check Helen again?" I feel like something's not right. I approached the bed, checking thoroughly. The vital signs monitor was completely normal. Everything about her is normal. Are you mistaken? But instead of answering my question, Richard asked, "Are you afraid of working the night shift?" I looked at him with skeptical and uneasy eyes. Was he intentionally pressing the bell to get me to come here? Many things can happen at night. A young girl like you, alone in an empty hospital, he said, his voice slow. Richard's face looked strange. His smile seemed to hide a hungry look. "I have to go check on another patient." I tried to act normal and quickly left. I would definitely talk to someone about getting a different nurse to care for Mrs. Helen, preferably a male nurse. The next day, I had a scheduled day off. When I returned to work, Jessica told me about a man who had come looking for me on my day off. He said he was a family member of a patient who had been discharged and wanted to thank you. When I told him you weren't here, he looked very disappointed. Jessica described the man as middle-aged, tall, with slightly graying hair. Hearing the description, I immediately guessed it was Richard. Richard disappeared that day, and the hospital could not contact him for the next few days. Helen had no relatives to take care of her. I went to the records room to check Helen Miller's information and find contact information for her other relatives. But what made me shiver was that, in the contact information section, Richard's name was not listed. The emergency contact was Helen's daughter, Jennifer, who lived in Portland. I took the phone number from the file and called Jennifer. "Richard?" "I don't know anyone by that name," Jennifer said. "My mom has been a widow for 15 years. She lives alone." Her voice was both confused and angry. I hung up, my hands trembling. Richard had lied to me. He had impersonated Mrs. Helen's husband for a whole week, so what was his real purpose? I called the police immediately. 2 days later, they called back. The result struck me like lightning. His name is Richard Hayes, 47 years old, and he works for the hospital's cleaning company. This job allowed him free access to medical areas and to collect personal information about staff without anyone suspecting. My legs felt like jelly. "We're actively searching for him," the police officer continued. "Would you be able to identify him if we apprehend him?" I agreed. Richard could be anywhere, still watching me from places I couldn't imagine. Jennifer immediately transferred Mrs. Helen to another hospital. The hospital apologized and reimbursed all medical expenses. Jennifer was also understanding and didn't make a big deal out of it. 2 months have passed, but Richard still hasn't been found. I've changed jobs, moved, and even changed my name. I don't know how much longer this haunting will last. I quit my security guard job 3 years ago, but the memory of that night still haunts me. Every time I see a no signal on a screen, my heart starts pounding. In 2019, I was working the night shift as a security guard at Walmart. After 2 years on the job, I knew every nook and cranny of that place. That night, I was sitting in the security room, drinking coffee and watching NBA on my phone. The clock had just struck 2 a.m. when a loud crash echoed from somewhere in the building. It sounded like someone had knocked over a whole shelf. I immediately switched to the CCTV screens. Images from many CCTV displayed on 6 screens, covering everything from the main entrance to the hallways, from the central lobby to each individual department. I checked each angle, zooming in on areas where something might have happened. Nothing. Everything was silent. I grabbed my flashlight and keys and started patrolling from the ground floor. I meticulously checked each department. After about an hour of patrolling, finding nothing unusual, I returned to the security room. Maybe it was just a stray cat knocking over a trash can outside. I sat down, intending to go back to my phone, when I suddenly noticed something strange on CCTV number 8, which covered the Best Electronics department on the second floor. A faint, bluish light, like the glow from a TV screen. I zoomed in on that CCTV. Yes, there was definitely something glowing inside the store, but how could that be? I had just checked that store, and everything was off. I quickly grabbed my flashlight and keys to head back to the second floor. The second floor hallway was darker than the ground floor, with only a few emergency lights illuminating it. As I approached Best Electronics, I clearly saw the blue light from inside. I unlocked the door and stepped in. The scene inside stunned me. In the middle of the store, in front of a flat-screen TV, stood 2 people, an elderly man and an elderly woman. They stood close together, staring intently at the screen. "Excuse me, what are you 2 doing here?" I said loudly. The woman turned to look at me. Her face was wrinkled, and she offered a gentle smile with calm eyes. "This is the only program that makes him happy." I looked over at the man. He was still staring straight at the screen, unmoving. My hand unconsciously tightened its grip on the flashlight. "How did you get in here?" "We closed at 11 p.m. "We just need to watch a little longer. He really likes this show," the woman said. A chill ran down my spine from the way she spoke. The man hadn't moved or said a word since I entered. I started to wonder if he was even alive. That thought made me want to run immediately. "I have to report this. You 2 need to come out with me." My voice was stiff, trying to hide the rising panic. "Just 5 more minutes. Please, I'll call the police if you don't cooperate." I pulled out my walkie-talkie, my hand trembling as I pressed the button to call the night supervisor. While calling, I didn't dare take my eyes off the 2 people. "Jake, I've got 2 intruders in Best Electronics on the second floor. Need backup and call the police." "Roger, keep them there. I'm calling the police now." When I hung up and turned back, the 2 people were gone. I stood frozen. I had only looked down at the walkie-talkie for a second to hang up. How could they disappear so quickly? I shined my flashlight around the entire store, my hands shaking uncontrollably. My breathing became rapid, as if there wasn't enough oxygen in my lungs. I shined my flashlight all over the store. No one. I checked the storage room in the back, the employee restroom, all empty. The TV was still on, displaying a blue screen. The police arrived. They searched the entire building, but found no one. There were no signs of forced entry at any of the entrances. All the doors were still locked, and the alarm system was functioning normally. "Are you sure you saw them?" the police officer asked me with skepticism. I understood immediately. He thought I was hallucinating. "Absolutely sure. They were standing right in front of that TV." They asked to review the CCTV footage. We sat in the security room, replaying the recording from 3 a.m. On the screen, I saw myself opening the door to Best Electronics and stepping inside. I stood in the store, shining my flashlight everywhere, and I was talking to thin air. I froze, feeling like I was going crazy. In the CCTV footage, the store was completely empty. It was just me standing alone, talking to the darkness. But I swear with a God that I saw those two people. I still vividly remember that woman's voice and her eyes. The police examined the CCTV footage until morning. On the screen, the TV was indeed on, emitting a blue light. But no one else was visible besides me. I worked for 3 more months, then quit. Not because I was afraid, but because I couldn't focus anymore. Every night on patrol, I would stop by Best Electronics. The TV was always off, the store always empty, but sometimes I still felt like someone was watching me from inside. 6 months later, I read that Best Electronics had closed down. The reason: low revenue and unexplained technical incidents. They said the electronic devices in the department would often turn on by themselves at night, especially the large flat-screen TV. That department is now a bakery, but I never dare go in. Some nights when I drive by, I still see the dim light from inside. It's as if the old couple is still standing there, watching their favorite show on a non-existent screen.